Hey everybody, I'm really glad you found Suncrest Messages. I do hope you'll take a minute to subscribe to either our podcast or our YouTube channel. And you can also download the Suncrest app. There's great stuff there that goes far beyond these messages. Either way, I hope that the next 30 minutes helps you integrate faith with your life. Enjoy.
You know, you can probably imagine these days, I would love to find just one thing that I could get everybody to agree on. It's harder than you think these days, finding just one thing. But I think I found it. Let me try this out on you. So far, 2020 has been a trip. Can we all agree on that? Yes, we can all agree on that. Now, I love actually the imagery of a trip or a journey to kind of describe how our life and our faith works. The scriptures use that imagery all the time, and we know that when you live life, you know, there are hills and valleys and roadblocks and times when you just let it kind of go wide open, and it's a beautiful image. But a lot of times when I think about that image, I actually named a message once. We did the song, Life is a Highway, right? Now, you all know who sings Life is a Highway, right? It is Rascal Flatts, which is the guy who second sang Life is a Highway, because Tom Cochran actually came up with Life is a Highway, but I'm not really wanting to be the guy on the stage who mocks an answer, someone who actually tried to answer my question. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much. But Life is a Highway, that imagery is like windows down, wind blowing through your hair, music going, everyone's smiling and laughing. It's like, enjoy the ride. That's Life is a Highway, but that's not 2020, right? I mean, 2020 as a trip, I think, is a little bit more like a driving family vacation, right? Now, in the Lee family, I drive the Lee family minivan, right? I'm cool like that, driving minivan these days. Actually, I had somebody tell me, I was telling this story a few weeks ago where I've gotten no speeding tickets for like the last 5 years, and someone came up to me a couple weeks later, they're like, Greg, I think that correlates with you starting to drive the Lee family minivan. And I'm like, well, maybe that actually goes together. But this Lee family minivan has 266,000 miles on it right now, and it's a road trip machine. Like, we've been on all kinds of family vacations. I love driving family vacations. It's been to Niagara and back, New York City and back, Washington, D.C. and back, Florida multiple times and back, Arkansas and back, Texas and back, Yellowstone National Park and back. Like, this is just the way the Lee family does vacations. And I'm not really the guy, definitely not the guy, who pays to have the entertainment system as part of the minivan. It's like, we're just going to rough this out. We're going to tackle it. And you know why I do that? Because my parents did it to me. I'm kind of curious. How many of you grew up going on driving family vacations, right? Now, I got to tell you this. When I was growing up, I have cool parents. They took us out of school for 2 weeks. When I was in fourth grade, I have an older brother and a younger brother, to go to Florida. We'd never been to Florida before. And the car we take on those family vacations when I was a child is this car. 1978 Lincoln Town Car, and this was like the vacation car for us. It was big enough, you know, three brothers can be in the back seat and not kill each other immediately, at least, right? And we would take this thing on trips, and, you know, here's the thing about these trips, right? You get not very far down the road, and kids in the back seat get kind of bored or kind of frustrated or kind of, Florida's a long way. I grew up in Illinois. It's a long way from Illinois, and I'm imagining we're probably an hour in the trip, and I'm the whiny kid in the back saying, are we there yet? Right? Because the destination isn't actually that close, and the journey isn't actually that enjoyable, and I don't like it. And this is the thing. It's kind of human nature to avoid things we don't like. Now, there's all kinds of things that you don't like, and some of them are small, some of them are big, but isn't this the experience? You come up against something in your life, it's something you don't like, and the instinct is to push it out of the way, to over-engineer, take control, try to solve the problem, to run away from it or avoid it, or at the very least, complain about it. Whenever something comes up that we don't like, that's generally how it goes. And this is part of the challenge of 2020, is that there's lots of things going on that aren't any fun and that we don't like. And I'm not being dismissive of them at all. I'm going to kind of describe some examples that I have to imagine are examples in your life. Maybe you have different examples, but this is just what I see pastorally. I see that relationally this year, families are struggling. If your marriage is in the toughest spot it's ever been in, or maybe hanging on by a thread, if your kids are constantly in battles with each other or with you or fighting through school in ways that, I just promise you're not alone. That's not good news that you're not alone, but it's true. Lots of people are in a tough spot in their homes right now. It's not just our homes, of course, it's financially or maybe with job security. There was kind of the initial scare when this started, and then it's kind of drip, 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 drip. Our main thing that came through our prayer requests last week were people who actually still have their job, but the concern is it may not be there long term. And we're praying through those things. That's no fun. It's not the good part of life. If you're in a leadership position, maybe you lead a big company or a small company. Maybe you lead an organization or a government entity or just the department at work or just your family. But if you're in a leadership role, we all know this, right? This has been the hardest year of leadership you've ever experienced, ever. To navigate what we're navigating, to make the tough calls that you have to make. It's just a little bit overwhelming. And then there's the health side on top of all of it. This ranges COVID and not COVID, but I have a grandmother who's 99 years old. I've been anticipating her 100th birthday, which will be March of next year, for a long time, picturing what the party's going to be like, looking forward to that. She lives in a long-term care facility right now, and I found out this week that there are 10 people at that long-term care facility who tested positive. I'm like, it's not good. And these things, they just hang over us. They're just part of life right now. And they're things that I just kind of wish would go away. I wish we could go past. I wish I could avoid them when things you don't like. I wish I could control them somehow. And there's a big part of me that thinks, yeah, there's a destination out there, but it doesn't seem very close, and it's a rough road along the way. So are we there yet? Are we there yet? So over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to explore what I think is a critically important concept, and I want you to have kind of the groundwork for this. I think that real life and real faith have to go together. That's just my conviction. If you've been around here long, you know that's my conviction. I get annoyed, nice pastor annoyed, with people who talk about faith in ways that have nothing to do with real life. It's almost like they're tone deaf or they're clueless to what's really going on in the world, even what's really going on in their world, but they talk about God in these ways that don't seem to connect with real life. I also get annoyed, I guess, with people who are followers of Jesus, but honestly, like Monday through Saturday, they're living real life without their faith. Like it's not actually intersecting their real life. So there's people who look at this faith and don't connect it to life, and there's people who walk through life and they don't connect it to faith. And I'm like, no, we got to connect the two. And so over the next 4 weeks, I want to give us a vision for how this all fits together. Now, one of the ideas that maybe will help kind of capture this for all of you is what's called the Stockdale paradox. I don't know if you're familiar with this. Jim Collins is a business book writer, writes lots of great stuff. In his book, Good to Great, he interviewed Admiral James Stockdale. Now, Admiral Stockdale has the distinction that no one would want, that he was the highest-ranking military officer during Vietnam to be captured and become a POW. He was a prisoner of war for 8 years. He was in what they call the Hanoi Hilton, and he was abused, tormented, tortured in order to try to get information or to be used as propaganda. And so, in interviewing Admiral Stockdale, Jim Collins, of course, asked him the question all of us would wonder about. Like, 8 years, what got you through? And this is his answer. He says, I never lost faith in the end of the story. I never lost faith in the end of the story. While things were difficult and as they were hard, I had to keep my eyes up, my aim a little bit higher to never lose faith in the end of the story. And actually, this is just his story. After this is all done and he looks back on it, he says that he would not trade the experience. That as ugly and difficult as it was worth it for what it brought to him. Now, of course, then Jim Collins asked Admiral Stockdale, so who are the guys who didn't make it? Who are the guys who gave up too early, or that they didn't even survive, or they just had a horrible experience the whole time? And Admiral Stockdale's answer to that question surprised me. He said the people who didn't make it were the optimists. I thought, the optimists? I mean, I would think the optimists would be the ones who would make it. Explain that a little bit, and he did. He said the optimists always took a posture that this would be done soon. By Christmas, we'll be out. By your birthday, you'll be out. By next summer, we'll be out. But the problem with being an optimist, when the optimism is empty, is that Christmas comes and then Christmas goes and you're not out. And the birthday comes and summer comes. And to just think, I'm focused on getting out, and it has to be by now, and then it doesn't happen, is even more torturous. And so then Admiral Stockdale explains what's called the Stockdale paradox. He wants you to see two things that don't naturally seem like they go together, but are essential to piece together. Here's what he says. You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose. You have to have that faith that you'll prevail in the end, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be. And so over the next 4 weeks, when we're thinking about, are we there yet, as we navigate 2020, I want this to be our framework. That it comes with some eyes up, big picture pieces that look and have a confidence in the future, while not being unwilling to address the brutal reality that is right in front of us. And the way I'm going to structure this is today and the last week, fourth week, are going to be eyes up. We're going to aim a little higher. And in the middle 2 weeks of this series, we're going to be kind of head down and see, okay, what steps we have to take to make sure we make it through. And I think this is almost instinctive if you stop and think about it. See, when I was on that car ride to Florida in the backseat of my parents' Lincoln Town car, and I would get bored or I'd get frustrated or whatever, I'd immediately go to coping mechanisms. That's what people do first. And some of the coping mechanisms were healthy. I mean, how many of you played the game let's see if we can find a license plate from every state in America, right? Okay, we're just passing the time somehow. And then, you get frustrated and you run out of good coping mechanisms and you go to I'm drawing a line on the seat my brother cannot cross, right? I'm shoving my little brother down on the floorboards and I'm climbing up in the back window and my older brother has the seat and we just ride like this. It was a different day, trust me, when we ride like that. But it's what I see happening maybe in your life. I don't know, only you could tell me. That when the stresses of a year like this start to weigh us down, you turn to coping mechanisms. And some of them are fine. And some of them aren't. And I'm looking for the honest people in the room who will say, Greg, it's me. I've been drinking too much. I've been medicating in ways that are unhealthy. I've been reaching out to habits that are actually destructive to me, to my relationships. If somebody could just admit that, if you could admit that, it would be powerful. But when I'm in the back seat using my coping mechanisms, thank God for my parents who are in the front seat. My mom's awesome. She's up there saying, hey, guys, it's a little while till we get there, but aren't you looking forward to the beach? Aren't you looking forward to the destination? Can't you lift your eyes up a little bit? Can we start to anticipate together that we'll be walking along the shore, finding some seashells, that we're going to Disney World? I mean, what ride do you want to ride? What character do you want to meet? Let's think about the future that lift our eyes up a little bit. And so today I want to ask you to lift your eyes up a little bit. You remember a little bit ago when I told you it's human nature to avoid things that we don't like? I don't know if this would surprise you, but there's some parts of the Bible I don't like. There's parts of it that are just immediately encouraging and seem like they give me what I need for today and help me fight through. And there's other parts, and it's not that they're not good, they are good. It's just I don't like the answer that I get. And so today, I'm going to share one of those passages with you. This is 3 verses from the book of James, and I think it's the right place to start in our journey of Are We There Yet? I tell you all the time, James was the brother of Jesus. I think that's significant. At the time James wrote this, he was also kind of the pastor, you might even say the bishop over the church in Jerusalem. And the church in Jerusalem was, we're having a bad year. They had a few bad decades. Their brothers and sisters sometimes were killed because of their faith. They were scattered. They were persecuted. James, I'm just giving you his credibility for writing this. He was part of a community in crisis. He was actually the leader of a community in crisis. What they were enduring matches what we were enduring. And it's in that context that he writes this. I'm going to read you all 3 verses together, and then we're going to walk back and go through them phrase by phrase. He says, whenever you face trials of many kinds, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. So let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Will you walk through this passage with me and integrate it into your 2020 life? I mean, he starts in the place that we all can relate to. Whenever you face trials of many kinds. He's saying whenever, it's not if you face trials. He knows that Jesus was the one who told us, in this world you will have trouble. You shouldn't expect anything else. You shouldn't expect that because you're a follower of Jesus, you'll avoid trouble. That's not the storyline of the scriptures. In this world you will have trouble, and practically we all know it. So you're going to face trials of many kinds. And then his first piece of wisdom to us is to say, so consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters. Now, it's important that he says brothers and sisters, because he is very specifically talking to a group of people who are followers of Jesus. And if you're not a follower of Jesus, I really want to invite you in to be a follower of Jesus, because it will help you to see the world in a way that is different. This is important. All of us who are followers of Jesus, we know the central story of our faith. The central story of our faith is that Jesus suffered and died unjustly on a cross for our sake. That's the story of our faith. And it does end with death, burial, and resurrection. Thank God, it's a critical part to the story. But we cannot avoid that just as our king, our leader, Jesus, faced trials of many kinds, we do too. And the scriptures say that it was for the joy set before him that he endured the cross. And so what James is doing for us here is he's saying, listen, you can zoom in on your trials, but you'll need to zoom out and reframe how you think about them. And consider it, choose to see it as pure joy. Now, he's not saying, so you'll be happy. He's contrasting joy and happiness here. He knows that our instinct for happiness is whatever's happening. We're happy today because it's a good day. We're unhappy tomorrow because it's not a good day. He says, this isn't happiness that I'm talking about. I'm talking about something totally different. Don't consider it happiness. Consider it joy. Because joy is the confidence that God is who he says he is and will do what he has said he would do and is with you and present and strengthening through it all, no matter what, and that there is an end. There's a destination that's worth getting to, even if it's hard right now. That's the way you reframe it to joy. And then he says this. He says, because this is a period of testing your faith. And he's going to describe to us that the test partially demonstrates something about your faith, and then it also produces something in your faith. Let's talk about the test, the demonstration first. He says, you know that the testing of your faith will show you something. And when he's saying you know, what he's saying is, this is not the first time you've been through this. I'm reminding you of something, not teaching you something. And I want for all of you who are followers of Jesus to be reminded that at previous times in your life, you went through difficult things, and God was faithful. He may or may not have produced the result that you wanted, but that's not the test of God's faithfulness. The test of God's faithfulness is whether he keeps the promises he said. And faith is a test. It's just like the exams you take at school. It's going to reveal whether you really know something, whether you really trust something. In your trials, that's when you know. What is my faith like? What is my faith really like? Is it possible that my faith's kind of counterfeit, or it's built on something that it won't endure? Trials will test your faith. And here, this is so important. Faith is about your confidence in God. And he's asking you in the midst of your difficulty not to judge God based on whether he's doing what you want him to do or when you want him to do it. He's asking you not to place your faith in a result that you want. He's asking you to lift your eyes up and aim higher than the trial and know that God is with you no matter what. That the promise of God is not actually that all your relationships will be fine next week or next year. That's not what God promises. And the promise of God isn't that you actually keep your job that is tenuous right now. God didn't promise that. And God didn't promise that leadership would be easy or that your organization or business would make it through. Those aren't actually God's promises, or that your health would be healed. We all pray for those things, and you should pray for those things. But this is so important. This is what James is teaching us. He says, if your faith is in the result that you want, that's not faith. The object of our faith isn't the result that we wish would come true, or that it would come true on the timeline that we want it to come true. Faith is in God and God's promises are that he'd give you strength for this day and that he would be with you no matter what you face. And he says the testing of that faith produces something: perseverance. Now, most of us, we're not signing up for perseverance, right? Like, nobody goes and gets in that line. Like, there's good stuff over here, there's fun stuff over here. Oh, here's perseverance. I'm going to get in that line. We don't do that. But maybe we should. Maybe we should. Maybe perseverance is actually more valuable than getting the results that we want in the time frame that we desire. See, it's our instinct when we go through tough times to avoid the tough times. So our prayers look something like this: God, would you remove this? God, would you remove this? God, would you remove this? But the prayer of faith in a tough time says, God, would you use this? Now, that's not an easy thing for me to say to you, but I promise you it's beneficial. And the testing of your faith, it's like a muscle. You have to exercise it. You have to trust God. You have to go to the gym. And if you opt out of trusting God, it won't actually produce the perseverance. And so James is basically saying, don't skip going to the gym with your faith. He says, let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Because when you and I have our prayers to God and they're all hung up on a particular result, that result might come. It might come or it might not come. It might come in a timing you want, or it might not come in a timing that you want. I don't want you to give up on the dream, the destination. But Admiral Stockdale, it was 8 years. And it was the people who had to have it solved by Christmas and by their birthday and by next summer that didn't make it. And when Israel was in the wilderness, the people of God in the wilderness, it was 40 years. And our instinct to run away, our instinct to over-engineer it and grab control of it and say, this is mine, not yours, God, is actually the thing that will keep us from experiencing that which will make us mature and complete and not lacking anything. And so, I don't know if you feel like this is me turning the dial just a little bit or if I'm totally spinning the dial on you, but I want to ask you to pray a very specific prayer with me this week. For whatever we're going through, God, use this until you remove this. God, I want you to remove it. I want life to be different. I want it to be overcome. I want it to be solved. But I do understand, God, that your timing is not my timing, and that until it's removed, I should not suppose that you're doing nothing. That what you actually want to do is do something in me to build my confidence so that I'm mature and complete and not lacking anything. Listen. We all know this. If I asked you to turn to your neighbor and describe the time that you grew the most in your life, 90% of you would answer about a time that was very difficult. It is in the toughest times, in the greatest trials of our lives, that we grow the most. God rarely gets our attention when it's win after win after win after win, but when it's a loss, we tend to go to him, and it's a good thing as long as we keep going to him. And we're reminded, he is who he says he is. He will do what he promised to do. He will always be with you. He will consistently be a source of strength, even if the problem doesn't get solved in the way you want it solved and on the timeline you desire. So, God, will you use our trials? Will you use our pain? Will you use our difficulties? Will you use them while we have them until you remove them? Because I have faith and confidence that there is an end that is coming. I don't know when it is, and I don't actually know how it will work out. I know it's out there, but until God removes it, could we pray? Could we decide we're going to be interested in the work he's doing in us, not just the result that we want? Here's the reason I ask you this. People grow. People's faith and confidence in God grows the most in tough times, but it is far from guaranteed. There are many people who go through tough times, and they experience the pain, but they don't experience the gain. I mean, you've heard the phrase, no pain, no gain. I think it's generally an accurate phrase. But here's what I want to leave you with today. Pain without gain would be a shame. And I want all of us to get to the end of the stories that we're living right now, to the end of the journeys, to the destinations where we want to end up. And when we look back on this season, not look at it and say, well, I coped in unhealthy ways. I gave up on my faith in God. I was only interested in God if he would do what I said he would do. And you actually endure all the pain, but you don't get any of the gain. And so, eyes up. Aim a little higher. Don't get confused. Don't be persuaded that the only thing you need to be interested in right now is the result of getting through this and getting the answer that you want. If instead, right now, God might be doing a great work in you that would bring about a perseverance and a maturity and a completeness to your faith that will make you stronger for the next trial that is guaranteed to come. Can we pray together for that right now? God, don't ever allow us to put you on the hook and to make the embodiment of our faith a certain result at a certain time. God, we do pray that you would remove the fights, the trials, the roadblocks, the pain, the death that is in our lives today. But God, in this room together, we pray that until you remove it, that you would use it in our lives. That we would see things about you that we couldn't see without it. That we would trust you in new ways. That we would decide to surrender our control. And that we would become mature and complete through this, not lacking anything. And so, God, just as we reconcile this today and this week, I want to lead us to say we're available to you. We're available for what you want to do in us and through us. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, I really hope that was helpful for integrating faith with life. Listen, if you're in Northwest Indiana, I'd love to have you join us in person. Head over to suncrest.org and plan your visit.